I never imagined I'd walk away from the woman I planned to marry. Not because I stopped loving her, but because loving her was destroying me. Her childhood was a nightmare. Her parents were narcissistic, manipulative, and emotionally abusive. She was the scapegoat of the family, blamed for everything, ignored when she succeeded, and punished when she failed. Her 2 brothers were favored. She was discarded. At 18, they threw her out with nothing. No safety net. No support. But she fought back. She put herself through school, built an impressive career, and created a life she could be proud of. That's the woman I fell in love with. Resilient, intelligent, kind, and determined. But as soon as she became financially stable, her family resurfaced. At first, it was subtle. Phone calls asking how she was doing, guilt-laced messages about family and forgiveness. Then it escalated. They began showing up unannounced at our home. Not visiting, invading. Her mother acted like she owned the place. Her father ate our food and left dishes piled high. Her brothers trashed rooms and made no effort to clean up. Every visit ended with them asking her for money. And every time she froze. She'd stand silently in the corner, trembling, eyes downcast, hands shaking. She never said no. Never pushed back. Never defended herself or us. I watched her write checks she couldn't afford, transfer money she'd worked years to earn, and apologize for things she didn't do. Talk to her. Over and over. I begged her to set boundaries. I explained how unhealthy this was, how destructive it had become. She always gave the same answer. There's still a little girl inside me who wants their approval. I watched her cry herself to sleep more times than I can count. And I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just hurting her. It was destroying our future. We were planning a wedding, marriage, family. And I could already see what that would look like. Her parents controlling our household, her brothers bleeding us financially, our children growing up in the same toxic environment she barely survived. Couldn't allow that. So I made a decision I never wanted to make. I told her I needed to delay the wedding. Not cancel it, but pause, until she established real boundaries with her family. I didn't want her to go no contact immediately. I asked for something reasonable. No more surprise visits, no more financial handouts, clear rules about behavior in our home. I also asked for couples therapy before marriage. I thought she'd understand. I was wrong. When I brought it up, she stared at me like I'd betrayed her. Then she exploded. She accused me of not understanding her family dynamic. She said, it works for her. I told her, firmly, that abuse doesn't work. That love doesn't require begging. That parents shouldn't make their child earn affection. That's when things turned ugly. I told her that if she refused to set boundaries, I couldn't move forward with the marriage. Not like this. Not with her family in our lives the way they were. I said I needed limits, or I needed to walk. She lost it. She screamed. She told me to get out. Since the house was technically hers, she kicked me out that night. And just like that, the woman I planned to marry became someone I didn't recognize. And I found myself standing alone with a suitcase, no home, and a broken heart. I moved into a hotel. First it felt surreal. But then something unexpected happened. I felt peaceful. No screaming. No unannounced guests. No chaos. Just quiet. I caught up on movies I hadn't had time for. Played games. Slept through the night. And for the first time in years, I wasn't bracing myself for the next emotional explosion. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Because I also knew one thing. Saturdays were coming. And Saturdays were when her family always came. I muted my phone that Saturday. And what happened next changed everything. Saturday came just like clockwork. I knew her parents and brothers would show up, demand money, insult her, and leave her emotionally wrecked, just like every other time. And normally, I'd be there to absorb the abuse, deflect the insults, and quietly shield her from the worst of it. But not this time. This time I muted my phone. I spent the day playing games, avoiding reality, and trying not to think about what she was going through. Part of me felt guilty, but another part felt something stronger, resentment. I was exhausted, emotionally drained. I had spent years trying to protect her from people who didn't deserve her love, and I had nothing left to give. By nightfall my phone was flooded. Over a dozen missed calls. Texts. Voicemails. The last two were frantic. Panic. Desperate. I knew something had gone very wrong. So I went back. When I walked into the house, she was on the floor, sobbing. Her face was swollen, her eyes red, her body shaking. When she saw me, she collapsed into my arms, clinging to me like she was drowning. I let her cry. I didn't interrupt. I didn't ask questions. I just held her. Eventually, she told me what happened. Her parents and brothers had come over, unannounced as always, and demanded money. When she hesitated, they tore into her, insulted her, shamed her, accused her of being ungrateful, called her names no one should ever hear from their own family. She tried to call me for help. I didn't answer. She called friends. They refused to come. They were tired of being used as shields. That's when it finally hit her. She kicked her family out, but not before they unleashed one last round of cruelty that left her completely broken. She kept apologizing, over and over, begging me to come home, telling me she finally understood, that she'd set boundaries, that she'd change. I listened. Then I told her the truth. I told her I had been building resentment for a long time, that while I understood her trauma and didn't see her as abusive, the situation itself had become toxic and unsustainable. I loved her, but love wasn't enough anymore. I laid out my boundaries, non-negotiable ones. She would sell the house and we would buy one together. Her family would never step foot in our home again. We would go low contact immediately, working toward no contact. She would get a new therapist. We would start premarital counseling. I would never be forced to interact with her family again. I told her plainly, if she couldn't accept these terms, we would go our separate ways. She said she understood. She admitted her family was toxic. She said she wanted to change, but some of it would take time. For now, I stayed in the hotel. She was welcome to visit me, but I refused to go back to the house. We spent the next day together. Things felt hopeful. Fragile but hopeful. I decided not to update anyone for a while. I wanted to give her space to heal, to prove change, to rebuild. But then everything collapsed. A few nights later, she started texting strangely, vague, delayed. When she finally came over, she unloaded on me. She accused me of being controlling, abusive, overly demanding, unsupportive. Took 5 seconds for me to recognize the words. They weren't hers. They were her parents. I asked her directly if her family told her to say this. She admitted they suggested it, but claimed she came up with the rest herself. I asked her to explain specifically what I had done. She said I was living like a parasite off her. I reminded her I paid 50-50 for the mortgage, utilities, groceries, had my own car, my own job, and unlike her parents, I wasn't draining her weekly. She couldn't respond. She accused me of trying to isolate her. I told her I'd always supported her friendships, the ones she destroyed because no one wanted to deal with her family or be used like I was. That's when she broke. She screamed that I didn't understand her family, that she just wanted to earn their love. And suddenly I saw it clearly. She didn't want help. She didn't want healing. She wanted to suffer. If that suffering meant she might someday be loved by people who were incapable of loving her. That realization hit me like a truck. I asked her to leave. And that was the moment I knew. This relationship was over. But what happened next, after she left, was even worse than the breakup. After she left that night, neighbors knocked on my door. They were concerned. Some of her friends reached out asking if I was okay. I told them the truth. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, and needed time alone. What they told me next was alarming. She had been venting to them too, saying similar things, claiming I was abusive, controlling, manipulative. Some of them suspected she was spiraling. One even mentioned she might be at risk of losing her job. She was isolating herself, burning bridges, and pushing away the only people who cared about her. And there was nothing I could do. A few days later, I realized I had made a mistake. I hadn't changed my mailing address. Some important documents were delivered to her house. I also had a few personal items there that I needed. She wasn't responding to messages, so I went there with a mutual friend just in case. She let me in, but that was the only kindness she showed. She unleashed a barrage of insults, told me she was already sleeping around, that she was happier without me, that she was finally free, that she'd be better off without me. It was all painfully scripted, not because the words hurt, but because she looked dead inside when she said them. No smile, no satisfaction, just anger, exhaustion, and emptiness. The house was a mess. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. She didn't yell, she just sounded hollow, like a shell of the woman I once knew. Finally I snapped. I told her, "Congratulations. Your friends are gone. Your human shields are gone. Your engagement is over. Your support is gone. Anyone who ever treated you like a decent human being is gone. Now it's just you and your family. I hope you're happy while they bleed you dry." She stared at me blankly. Then she walked away. As I left, my friend Tiffany asked if I was okay. I said I was, and that I just wanted to go home and start over. She also told me something devastating. My ex had, in fact, lost her job. She had stopped showing up, ghosted them. They were planning an intervention, and asked if I would participate. I refused. I wasn't delaying my healing to watch someone destroy themselves. A few days later, more mutual friends updated me. Things had gotten worse. She had a breakdown after another visit from her family, a full-blown panic attack that ended with her in the ER. That's when it finally clicked for her how badly she had ruined her life. She tried calling me. I had her blocked. She hadn't lost her job after all. That part had been wrong, but she was hanging by a thread. Her boss forced her to take PTO and seek help before they'd consider termination. Her friend group stepped in fully. Therapy appointments, boundaries, keeping her family away, even redirecting her parents when they tried showing up. Her parents and brothers tried to take the situation to Facebook, but it backfired. Their behavior was exposed, and public opinion turned against them. She sent me a message through a mutual friend. She admitted everything she said about me was false, fed to her by her family. She apologized. She hoped we might reconnect someday. I told her gently but firmly. We needed to stay apart permanently. I cared about her, but this was goodbye. She accepted it. Or so I thought. Because just when things seemed like they might stabilize, everything fell apart in the worst possible way. Despite all efforts from her friends, the situation collapsed. Not slowly but explosively. Tiffany, the friend who had helped me retrieve my belongings, began noticing something disturbing. My ex had become unusually affectionate toward Tiffany's boyfriend, Daniel. First it seemed harmless. Then it didn't. One night, Tiffany checked Daniel's phone. What she found destroyed everything. They had been having an affair for 8 months. That meant the betrayal began while my ex and I were still together. Tiffany confronted them. Chaos followed. Daniel, in a panic, threw another friend, Joseph, under the bus, claiming he had helped cover it up. Joseph's girlfriend dumped him and kicked him out. The friend group, 9 people strong, exploded overnight. Within days, only 2 people were still speaking to each other. My ex lost her entire support system in a single week. And the truth came out. She admitted that the night I left for the hotel, she invited Daniel over. Her plan had been to leave me for him eventually, but he refused to leave Tiffany. He didn't want a real relationship with her, especially not one involving her family. He was only willing to continue the affair in secret. So she lost me. She lost her friends. She lost her support. She lost everything. The group ostracized her completely. Even Daniel disappeared. She was blocked, cut off, left alone. She lost her job shortly after. And she moved her family back into her life full-time. They had finally won. 2 nights later she took her own life. Her family found her. One of her former friends arrived as emergency services were pulling in. Her family showed no visible emotion. No urgency. No grief. Just silence. Tiffany called me that night. She told me there were several notes. She gently asked if I wanted mine, for closure. I didn't know how to answer. My mind was spinning. Over the past month, I had come to accept that my ex was abusive in the relationship, emotionally through her family, and that leaving was the right choice. But now, everything was layered with betrayal, grief, guilt, anger, and confusion. Had she been trying to drive me away? Was anything between us real? Was the woman I loved ever actually there? Or was I in love with a trauma response, shaped by abuse, manipulation, and fear? Being back home was the best decision I ever made. Now I have therapy, support system, family close by, people who don't use me as a shield. And while I'll carry the weight of this story forever, I refuse to carry the blame. But the final revelation, hidden in her last messages, changed how I see everything.